You may not know her name, but chances are you've seen her face in one of the most unforgettable roles in modern cinema. In Mel Gibson's The Passion of the Christ, she appeared as Satan, silent, unsettling, and otherworldly. With her shaved eyebrows, piercing gaze, and almost genderless presence, Rosalinda Celentano embodied evil in a way that audiences had never seen before. Her portrayal was both terrifying and strangely hypnotic, leaving viewers around the world asking the same question: who is the woman behind that role? Rosalinda Celentano's story is not just about one haunting performance. Born into one of Italy's most famous entertainment families, she grew up surrounded by music, film, and fame. Yet instead of following a safe path under her parents' shadow, she carved her own identity. Bold, unconventional, and deeply artistic, she has been an actress, a model, a painter, and above all, a woman unafraid to live outside society's expectations. But her journey has not been easy. Behind the red carpets and cameras are struggles with identity, health, and the weight of carrying a famous last name. And yet, through it all, Rosalinda has remained true to herself, becoming a symbol of resilience and authenticity. This is the story of Rosalinda Celentano, the daughter of legends, the face of cinema's most haunting Satan, and an artist who continues to challenge how we see beauty, identity, and power. Early life and family background. Rosalinda Celentano was born on July 15, 1968, in Rome, Italy, into what can only be described as a dynasty of Italian entertainment. Her father, Adriano Celentano, was already a household name, one of the most popular singers, actors, and television personalities in Italian history. Known as Il Moleggiato for his distinctive dancing style, Adriano was more than just a pop star. He was a cultural icon, shaping Italian music and film throughout the 1960s and 70s. Her mother, Claudia Mori, was equally formidable, a successful actress, singer, and film producer. Together, Adriano and Claudia were Italy's power couple, celebrated not only for their talent but also for their enduring marriage, which became a rare example of stability in the world of show business. For Rosalinda, being the youngest of 3 children meant that she was constantly surrounded by fame and creativity. Her sisters, Rosita and Giacomo, would also pursue artistic paths. But Rosalinda was different from the very beginning. While her family thrived under the spotlight, she often found herself seeking refuge in solitude. She was shy, introspective, and drawn to painting and music more than to applause. Growing up in such a famous household came with unique challenges. On one hand, opportunities were everywhere. Directors, musicians, and actors were regular guests in their home. On the other, the Celentano name was a heavy burden. From the start, Rosalinda had to grapple with expectations that she, too, would become a star. But the idea of simply inheriting fame never appealed to her. Instead, she wanted to express herself in ways that felt raw, unconventional, and uniquely her own. As a teenager, Rosalinda struggled with questions of identity, who she was, what she wanted, and how she fit into a world that already seemed to have decided her path. While many of her peers dreamed of glamorous careers, Rosalinda's interests leaned toward the artistic and the spiritual. She loved sketching, experimenting with clothing styles, and pushing boundaries that most others never dared to cross. Her androgynous beauty was already evident, striking cheekbones, intense eyes, and a presence that blurred traditional ideas of femininity and masculinity. This sense of not fitting into the mold would follow her throughout her life. But instead of running from it, Rosalinda slowly began to embrace it. The very things that set her apart as a teenager, her intensity, her nonconformity, her refusal to play by the rules, would later become the qualities that defined her as an artist. By the late 1980s, Rosalinda was ready to step out into the world, not as Adriano Celentano's daughter, but as Rosalinda, a young woman with an unmistakable look, a sharp artistic instinct, and a willingness to take risks. She would soon begin her journey into modeling, acting, and the public eye. Yet, even in her earliest steps, one thing was clear: she was never going to be ordinary. First steps in acting and modeling. Rosalinda Celentano's first steps into the world of performance were not the typical story of a celebrity child being handed easy roles. Instead, she approached acting and modeling with the same independence that had defined her early life. She was never interested in being a carbon copy of her famous parents. She wanted to explore her own way of existing on screen. In the early 1990s, she began to appear in small Italian films and independent projects. These were not blockbuster hits or mainstream television dramas, but rather art house productions that allowed her to experiment with complex characters. Rosalinda seemed naturally drawn to roles that were intense, mysterious, or unconventional. She wasn't interested in playing the glamorous ingenue or the stereotypical leading lady. Instead, she gravitated toward characters that challenged her, and often challenged the audience. Parallel to acting, Rosalinda also ventured into modeling, where her androgynous appearance made her stand out. In an era when Italian fashion was dominated by ultra-feminine beauty ideals, Rosalinda broke the mold. With her sharp features, short hair, and magnetic presence, she became a striking figure on the runway and in editorial shoots. Designers and photographers loved her ability to embody both masculine and feminine energy, giving her a versatility few models possessed. This dual career, acting and modeling, helped her build a reputation as someone who didn't just perform, but transformed. She could step into a role or a photograph and make it unforgettable, not because she conformed to expectations, but because she subverted them. This quality would later make her the perfect choice for one of cinema's most daring portrayals of evil. Throughout the 1990s, her name began to circulate more widely in Italian entertainment circles. She earned supporting roles in films that reached festival audiences, slowly carving a space for herself in the industry. While she wasn't yet a household name, she was establishing the foundations of a career defined by courage and authenticity. What made Rosalinda stand out during this period was not just her artistic talent, but her refusal to play by the rules of celebrity. She was unconventional in how she dressed, how she spoke, and the kinds of projects she accepted. At a time when many aspiring actresses aimed for fame, Rosalinda was content with being different, even if it meant being misunderstood. This attitude of nonconformity would set the stage for the moment that changed everything. In the early 2000s, an international filmmaker searching for someone who could embody evil itself would discover Rosalinda Celentano, and her life would never be the same again. Career in Italian cinema and TV by the mid-1990s. Rosalinda Celentano was beginning to make her mark on the Italian screen. She wasn't yet a star in the traditional sense, but within the world of Italian cinema, her name was becoming synonymous with artistry and intensity. Directors who wanted something unconventional, something that pushed boundaries, found in Rosalinda the perfect collaborator. Her first notable recognition came in 1993, when she won the Nastro d'Argento, one of Italy's most prestigious film awards, as Best Supporting Actress for her role in the abandoned Il Sem della Discordia. The award was a turning point, signaling that she wasn't just the daughter of Adriano Celentano and Claudia Mori. She was an actress in her own right, capable of delivering performances that lingered with audiences. Rosalinda's early roles revealed her range. She often portrayed characters on the fringes of society, troubled, mysterious, or deeply emotional. Unlike many Italian actresses of her generation, who were often typecast into romantic comedies or melodramatic roles, Rosalinda carved a space for herself in more serious, artistic films. She seemed to thrive in stories that dealt with identity, alienation, or existential struggle. At the same time, she appeared on Italian television, where her presence was equally captivating. While TV was often seen as a more commercial medium, Rosalinda managed to bring her same intensity to the small screen. She never treated television as less than cinema. For her, every role was an opportunity to embody a truth, to explore a character's hidden depths. Still, the comparisons to her parents followed her everywhere. Her father, Adriano, had been a superstar for decades, while her mother was a respected actress and producer. The Italian press loved to remind audiences of her famous lineage, but Rosalinda resisted being placed in a box. In interviews, she spoke candidly about the difficulties of living under such a large shadow. Fame, she suggested, was never her true goal. What mattered was authenticity, whether in art, film, or life. This outlook made her stand out in the industry. Many actresses worked tirelessly to craft polished images, but Rosalinda seemed almost indifferent to appearances. Her style was minimalist, androgynous, and strikingly modern. On red carpets, she rarely wore extravagant gowns. Instead, she often chose simple, tailored suits or understated dresses that emphasized her natural presence rather than glamour. This was not an act of rebellion for shock value, it was simply who she was. Her artistic choices also reflected her personal philosophy. Rosalinda was fascinated by roles that explored good and evil, light and darkness, beauty and strangeness. In many ways, she was preparing herself for the role that would one day define her. But at the time, she was simply following her instincts, choosing projects that spoke to her rather than those that promised fame. By the early 2000s, Rosalinda had built a solid foundation in Italian cinema and television. She was respected, if not yet internationally known. She had proven that she could stand apart from her family name and carve out a career that was distinctly her own, what no one could have predicted. However, was that a Hollywood director with a controversial vision of Christ's passion would soon come knocking. And when he did, Rosalinda Celentano's life would change forever. International recognition: The Passion of the Christ. In 2004, Rosalinda Celentano stepped into a role that would forever define her in the eyes of audiences around the world. Mel Gibson, the director of The Passion of the Christ, was searching for someone to embody Satan, not in the traditional, horned and red-skinned caricature of popular imagination, but in a way that was eerie, unsettling, and almost unclassifiable. Gibson's vision was of a Satan who was both male and female, human and inhuman, an ambiguous, haunting presence that would unsettle audiences on a deeper, psychological level. Rosalinda Celentano was an unexpected choice, but in hindsight, a perfect one. Her androgynous beauty, her sharp facial features, and her ability to project both vulnerability and menace made her an ideal candidate. When she appeared on screen with her shaved eyebrows, pale skin, and piercing eyes, she was instantly unforgettable. She didn't need elaborate prosthetics or special effects. Her presence alone was enough to disturb and mesmerize. The film itself was one of the most controversial of its era. The Passion of the Christ was brutal, graphic, and emotionally overwhelming. But even in a story dominated by Christ's suffering, Rosalinda's Satan managed to leave a lasting impression, silent, slithering, and almost ghost-like. She became the embodiment of temptation and evil. One of the film's most memorable moments is when she carries a grotesque, demonic-looking child in her arms, a twisted inversion of the Madonna and Child. The image shocked audiences and sparked countless debates about symbolism, theology, and the nature of evil. For Rosalinda, the role was transformative. Overnight, she went from being a respected figure in Italian cinema to becoming part of an international cultural phenomenon. Viewers around the world wanted to know who the actress behind that chilling performance was. Critics described her Satan as the most disturbing on-screen devil ever, praising her ability to unsettle without words. The performance was proof that sometimes silence, paired with sheer presence, can be far more powerful than dialogue. But international fame also came with challenges. Rosalinda suddenly found herself typecast by the very role that had brought her recognition. Many struggled to separate the actress from the character, a testament to just how convincing her portrayal had been. For years, interviews and press coverage often focused more on the Passion of the Christ than on her broader body of work. While she was proud of her role, Rosalinda often reminded people that she was more than just the face of Satan. Behind the scenes, her experience on the film was intense, but also deeply professional. Gibson's production was notorious for its grueling shoots, demanding emotional performances, and controversial artistic choices. For Rosalinda, embodying Satan required not just physical transformation, but also psychological distance. She approached the role with discipline, treating it as a performance rather than a personal statement about evil or faith. Still, she admitted in later interviews that playing such a dark and symbolic figure left its mark on her. The aftermath of the film was a paradox. On one hand, Rosalinda gained worldwide recognition and respect for her artistry. On the other, she had to navigate the weight of being forever associated with one of cinema's most terrifying depictions of evil. Yet, rather than running from it, she embraced it as part of her story. She understood that the role had given her a kind of immortality in film history, an indelible image that audiences would never forget. In the years following The Passion of the Christ, Rosalinda continued to work in European cinema and television. But no matter what she did, the shadow of Satan followed her. and perhaps in her own way. She accepted that this was her destiny, not as a curse, but as a reminder of her power as an artist, later career, artistry, and challenges after the global storm of the Passion of the Christ. Rosalinda Celentano faced a career crossroads. Many actors who appear in controversial blockbusters either lean into the fame or try to escape its shadow. Rosalinda did something different. She embraced the recognition but never let it define her entire artistic identity. For her, acting was only one form of expression. She was also a painter, photographer, model, and someone who constantly experimented with how art could communicate truths about the human condition. In the years following 2004, she continued to work in Italian and European cinema. She appeared in films such as Virgin Territory, 2007, a medieval romantic comedy that gave her a chance to step away from the dark imagery of Satan. She also took on supporting roles in dramas and independent productions, where her presence, always striking, always intense, added depth to the stories. Though none of these roles reached the same level of global recognition as The Passion of the Christ, they allowed Rosalinda to keep exploring her craft without being trapped by a single performance. At the same time, she returned to the world of fashion and modeling. Her androgynous look continued to inspire designers and photographers, particularly those seeking to challenge traditional ideas of beauty. In an industry often obsessed with conformity, Rosalinda's refusal to fit the mold became her strength. She became a kind of icon for those who valued authenticity over glamour, individuality over sameness. Her artistic talents extended beyond acting and modeling. Rosalinda cultivated a deep passion for painting and photography, using visual art as a way to express emotions and ideas that film alone could not capture. For her, art was never about commercial success. It was about honesty. Whether in front of a camera or behind a canvas, she sought to translate her inner struggles and philosophies into something tangible. But alongside her artistic achievements came personal challenges. Rosalinda has spoken openly about her struggles with depression, health issues, and the pressures of public life. Fame, while offering recognition, also came with isolation. The media often focused on her unconventional appearance and private life rather than her work, something she found both frustrating and exhausting. Yet, instead of retreating, she chose to confront these struggles head-on, speaking candidly in interviews about mental health and identity. One of her most courageous choices was her openness about her sexuality. In a country as traditional as Italy, Rosalinda's decision to live openly as a lesbian was not always easy, but she refused to hide or apologize for who she was. Her honesty made her an important figure for LGBTQ+ visibility in Italian culture, inspiring others who felt pressured to remain silent. Through all of this, Rosalinda maintained a quiet resilience. She was not someone chasing the limelight or desperate for constant attention. Instead, she was an artist in the truest sense, committed to expression, truth, and authenticity, no matter the personal cost. By the late 2000s and 2010s, Rosalinda had become more selective with her projects. She appeared less frequently in mainstream productions, focusing instead on roles and artistic ventures that spoke to her on a personal level. For her, success was not measured in fame or wealth, but in whether her work remained true to her vision. Even as her career slowed compared to the early years, Rosalinda never disappeared. She remained a compelling figure in Italian culture, an actress, artist, and icon who embodied the courage to live differently. And while her Satan would always be the role most associated with her, Rosalinda proved time and again that her artistry extended far beyond a single performance. Rosalinda Celentano's story is one of courage, complexity, and authenticity. She grew up in the shadow of Italy's entertainment royalty, yet refused to live by anyone else's script. Instead, she followed a path defined not by fame, but by self-expression, through film, modeling, painting, and photography. Her performance as Satan in The Passion of the Christ remains one of cinema's most chilling depictions of evil. With just her presence, silent, androgynous, and unsettling, she captured audiences in a way that dialogue or special effects never could. For many, that role will always define her. But Rosalinda is far more than a single performance. Away from the screen, she embraced a life of honesty. She spoke openly about her struggles with depression, her health, and her sexuality. living as a lesbian in a culture that often resisted such openness. By refusing to conform, she became a quiet icon for individuality, showing that beauty and strength exist outside of traditional boundaries. In the end, Rosalinda Celentano is not just the woman who once played the devil. She is an artist who transformed her struggles into art, who turned vulnerability into power, and who has inspired others simply by being unapologetically herself. Her life reminds us that the truest legacy is not built on fame or recognition, but on the courage to remain authentic, even when the world expects otherwise.